The Fujifilm X Pro 3 is one of the greatest cameras of all time, from the look, the aesthetic, the build, the rear hidden LCD screen, the offset rangefinder style patch on the left side. When I had the opportunity to grab this copy, the Durasilver version for $12.75, I had to jump on it. But when it came to choosing lenses for this, I know that I can choose XF lenses. I know that I can choose even some third-party lenses, adapt some EF glass, all these different options that I had. But when it came to the way that I've been shooting recently and what I want to do, not only with my work, but with my personal work, I decided not to go the autofocus route. And in that, I came up with the greatest union known to man when it comes to Fujifilm and lenses. And so today I want to talk to you about that amazing union, which is none other than the Fujifilm X Pro 3 and M mount glass. So the first thing I did was I had to decide on not what lenses to get, but what adapter to get. And it seems like it's a pretty tough decision, but it's very, very simple. Get any adapter, really. It doesn't have to be the most expensive one. It doesn't have to be the cheapest one. You get whatever looks comfortable to you. I recommend just going online, read the reviews, see how they work, and then you'll find something you like. I have one that is just a hunk of machined metal, and it's from a company called Earth. They're not sponsoring this, even though they sponsored a Volandis video recently. It's from a company called Earth, and it's very, very simple. It's just a piece of machined metal, nothing special about it. It fits on here, it has a nice satisfying click, and when I put my lenses on, it has a nice satisfying click as well. And then I go out on my way out and about shooting. So the way you put your adapter on your X Pro 3 is very simple. It's the same way you put on any other lens. Nothing else really changes. It goes on, and of course it has everything you need to functionally take off that lens in the end. There's no give, there's no twist, there's no pull, it just sits where it's supposed to sit. Now there are no magnetic, metal, whatever it is, contact points on this in order to get EXIF data from these lenses to this camera, so you're not gonna be able to see what your f-stop's at or anything like that, but you're still gonna be able to meter. Now at the same time, whenever it comes to that, it doesn't look like there's any context on this Voigtlander lens, so having contacts isn't really a deal breaker, and not having contacts isn't a deal breaker either. So one thing that I forgot to mention, so I had to come back and say, is Fujifilm basically begs you to use LEICA-M mount glass on their bodies. And one reason why I can say this is true is because they actually have a LEICA-M mount to Fujifilm X mount adapter already from Fujifilm. It's a proprietary one. The only issue is it's expensive as hell and does nothing different than this Earth or any other cheap K and F concept, whatever Voigtlander, TTRs, and whatever adapter does, and it doesn't even do close focusing. So I will always prefer something like this over actually getting something from Fujifilm, because they kind of price gouge, if I'm being honest about the company. But Fujifilm really wants you to be able to use these cameras for adapting LEICA-M mount glass, and that is no more evident than also the fact that on every single Fujifilm camera, not just on the X Pro 3, you can actually go into the menu system, and in the menu system you can go down to the little camera icon. You can go down to the third page or the second page, and they have mount adapter settings. And what you can do is once you click on mount adapter settings, it'll let you create some bright frame lines, but even better, it'll let you put in lens registrations. So now all I have to do is select what lens I'm using whenever I'm using it, and these lens registrations allow you to name it and choose what focal length that you actually are going to use. And whenever you choose the focal length, what it does is it helps you with a couple things. Number one, it gives you somewhat XF data for whenever you're taking this in Lightroom. It tells you the profile that you're using whenever you started shooting with this. And number two, which is probably the greatest thing ever, is the fact that it adjusts for the warp in your raw or in your JPEGs, which is huge because now you're taking those straight out of camera JPEGs with this. They're going to be just as flawless and corrected like they were Fujifilm original XF glass, but instead it's in your nice little Minolta 40mm f2 in Record. So when it comes to this combination, I'm not the first person to ever use this combo, but I'm also not going to be the last. I purchased two lenses, the 21mm f4 color scope bar from Voigtlander, which is an amazing lens, very, very sharp. When it comes to street photography, this was the no-brainer. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset, especially because they've already been upset in my DMs. They're wondering, why would you choose an f4 lens for street photography? Do you understand that in low light situations, this lens is useless? But here's the thing, I'm a grown-ass adult, and also I know how to use lenses in low light. A lot of people make a big deal out of this f4 lens right here. They're saying I could have gotten this lens or this kind of Zeiss, whatever, and gotten a faster lens because now I can't use this in low light. And listen, I'm an adult, number one, and number two, I know how to use my lenses in low light. And number three, f4s, I'm tipping wood grain on grip, and catch me lane switching with the paint. For everything that I do when it comes to street photography, I'm always no lower than f4, and I'm usually between f8 and f11. So having an f4 lens didn't really bother me. I know the color scope R has a great look. I know it has really good color rendering and great contrast, and that's what I wanted more than anything. On this I also have a CPL filter, which takes about a stop of light away, but shout out to my boy Leica-Lee. He's actually the reason I have this on here. It does something amazing when it comes to the colors from your sky. It also does a great job with helping color render, especially on these Fujifilm bodies. It just makes things pop, which I like, especially in editing posts, but more importantly, it does wonders for your straight out of camera JPEGs. Voigtlander has a couple of lenses made specifically for Fujifilm's X mount with the 35 1.2 and the 23mm 1.2, or is it 1.4? I'm not sure, but they're native. The only reason I didn't want those is because I didn't feel like paying $600, $700, $800 for a lens that does the exact same thing as a $21 adapter and a $300 lens, and it's going to be stopped down near identical to what I would have it stopped down on those lenses also. So I didn't need the bokeh. I didn't need anything crazy when it came to any features as far as being able to see my focus scale and what my aperture's at. I just needed a lens to put on my camera so I could take a damn shot. Now, again, going back to zone focus, it's very, very, very simple. For those of you that don't know anything about zone focus, you can also do this on your TT Artisans lenses, your 7 Artisan lenses, your Mikey lenses, as long as they have a focus scale on top of the lens. So you're gonna see right here, is this right here is your focus scale on top of the lens. And you're going to choose your aperture first, whether 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, all the way to 22. And the trick is you have these little notches in here that are the same as your f-stop that never move. And the only thing that moves is when you're moving your focus tab, basically your focus zone scale. And so you'll have them, there's a 4 and a 4, an 8 and an 8, 11 and 11, 16, 16, etc., etc. The basic thing to know is this: everything between your 2 points of identical numbers and every number that you have on your focus scale is what your range is. So if you take your lens right here and I put it on f4 and I move right here to f4 on this far side, this left side, to 1 meter, that means everything between 1 meter and 2 meter, because it's in between my 4s, is going to be in focus. Now, if I go to f8, which I'm usually sitting at for street, and I bring it to 1 meter, it shows right here that everything between 1 meter here and infinity is going to be in focus. This is the way that I'm making sure I'm hitting focus and never missing whenever it comes to street photography. Why is this a benefit? Because I now am employing something just like in my Ricoh GR3, just like I was doing with my Leica-Q, and just like I was doing with my X100V. I never have to autofocus. I never have to worry about if something is in focus because it is being taken care of by the camera. As long as I am far enough away and the subject is about a meter in front of me, I am able to turn my camera on, hit my shutter, and I am taking the photo that I need to take with the environment that I want all in focus. This is a big deal, and this is something that will always, no matter what, be faster than your autofocus. You can shoot with Sony, you can shoot with Canon, you can shoot with an X-T4, you can shoot with a Leica SL2. It doesn't matter. The fastest thing to use when focusing, no matter what, is zone focus. So another thing that's a benefit about this is how damn small and how light this kit is. Now, with this right here in this earth adapter, with this 21mm f4, it's a little bit smaller than your Voigtlander 35 1.4 that's created specifically for the X mount. And it's a little bit smaller than your 35mm f2 from Fujifilm. Now, again, great lens, great size, and if you even take off away from the adapter and you excuse the part that doesn't protrude from the lens and you're actually to take off this lens hood right here, it's about as small, actually I believe smaller, the 35mm 1.2 from 7 Artisans. That is great, that's amazing. Having small lenses is fun, and for someone who's been advocating for Fujifilm to actually put out their own manual focus lenses, or even just a pancake lens, you need to put more in the market. This is something that satisfies my need. As someone who's been crying, bitching, whatever you want to put, for pancake lenses or for manual focus lenses specifically from Fujifilm that give you a smaller size, smaller footprint with your X Pro bodies, this is a godsend right here. And you may be thinking, that's only small because of the 21mm f4-ness of it, the fact that it's an f4. Well, let me make something very, very clear. This isn't the only lens that I have, and this actually isn't the smallest lens I have. In fact, that title actually goes this Minolta 40mm f2. Now, the fun thing about this Minolta Immercore 40mm f2 isn't the fact that it has a 40.5 filter thread, and it isn't the fact that this thing is actually sharp as hell and looks amazing. It's the fact that this exact specific copy right here is actually a Leica lens. It's actually the Leica 40mm f2 Summicron C lens, but it was rebranded after Leica and Minolta. They had a partnership, and whenever they split up, Minolta put out what is known as the Minolta CLE, and this was the kit lens that came with it. And when I tell you this is now probably my favorite lens of all time to use, I've got to tell you, this is my favorite lens of all time to use. It's small, it's lightweight, it packs a huge punch. It always gets the job done. When I'm telling you about it's sharp, but not too sharp, and it's soft where it needs to be soft, this is exactly it. The rendering is very, very alike to Leica lenses. It's very beautiful, nice and detailed, contrasty and punchy. And again, this lens is actually, if I take off this filter thread, smaller than my 21mm f4 color scope art. This lens is a godsend. I actually got to use this lens this weekend when shooting my godson's football games, and I've been using it just messing around, and I'm telling you, the look of this lens, along with the size, the weight, the way the focus ring is just perfectly dampened, the way these clicks are perfectly clicky, just makes this the perfect portrait lens combo. I'm excited to use this more on some portrait things that I have coming up. This lens is great. It's nice, it's snappy, it has a focus scale, but I'm not using it for that. And even more, when it comes time to focus, this thing is so smooth and everything stays where it needs to stay. It's got enough of a dampening on the focus ring to help me hit perfect focus, and even more, just the way that it renders. So another thing Fujifilm does when it comes to manual focus lenses on these bodies is it gives you different options for focusing. Now, a lot of people have a preference of their own. Me personally, I love what is called split prism. And if you see right here, it just has on there a whole bunch of bars, and you just move your focusing tab until you line up the image. And it'll split it up, similar kind of to the way that a rangefinder style camera like the Leica-M bodies will do when using their rangefinder patch, but in a larger form. This is why I believe that Fujifilm probably has the technology and the ability to be able to make just a singular rangefinder patch, which is just a small square like this in the middle for everything else. But when it comes to this, there's also different modes. You can actually use, I think, 3 or 4. Specifically standard, which is just eyeballing it like you would in an SLR. Then you have your digital image split, which is I'm using in color or in black and white. Your micro prism, which is going to give you something of a little ball right there. And the same thing, you focus until everything in the ball is in focus. And the last one being focus peaking, which a lot of people like the most, which all it does is it makes everything red, yellow, white, or blue, whatever color you choose. Once something is in focus, it actually makes it that color to tell you this is now in focus. So hoping that tells. Sorry, I forgot about that, but I had to add these things in post. For a lot of people, you may be saying, listen, Fujifilm has great lenses. Fujifilm has great glass. Why not just go with their glass? But more than anything, this is about a feel. It's about a vibe. A lot of you may say, why don't you just switch to Leica? Get the M8, get the M9, get a 262. I just don't like the sensors and the color output because it's way oversaturated in my book, and it reminds me of looking at the old Samsung phones that people thought had the best screens in the game, but they were just the most saturated screens of the game. It's never something that has drawn to me. And I do wish Fujifilm would come out with their own manual focus glass. Would I buy that? 100%. For sure. The same way that Fujifilm is working with Voigtlander to remake these 35 1.2 and this 23 1.2 in order to help bring out the most out of the X-Trans sensor and its colors, I want Fujifilm to make those directly for themselves. But until then, this is the lens that I would recommend. I'm not trying to flood the market. I'm not trying to drive the price up, but I'm telling you right now, this lens, more than any other lens I think that I've owned in my life, has brought me the most joy. Listen, this is just fun. Things are just lightweight. Things are easy to do. Things are smooth. Things are tactile. I feel like I'm more in touch with everything going on just because I am. If I'm missing because of me, not because of my autofocus. And I'm able to do a lot of things just based on me having knowledge of my focus scale and me having knowledge of what focus looks like on here. It just brings things back to a nice, even playing field for myself to where I'm not relying on autofocus. And if you guys think about it, that's what we rely on most of the time today. It's no longer about the photographer. Listen, I've said it many a time and I've offended many a person. Photography is the easiest thing to do when it comes to hobbies nowadays. It's nothing like as hard as playing a piano, playing guitar, playing bass, as learning to paint, learning to draw, anything like that, working on cars. Photography is one of the easiest things you can do because you can now pair any camera in the world with a lens and you can actually take decent photos. whether on autofocus, whether with auto exposure, auto white balance. You can put with Fujifilm these film simulations that give you a different vibe. You can all be fantastic, great photographers. There is no gap when it comes to skill and taking images that are pleasing to the photographer anymore. The thing that is going to separate photographers from now on has nothing to do with what camera brand you had. It all has to do with execution and composition. And that's something that is kind of drawing me to this. This lens and these lenses are specifically and strictly, when put on any autofocus body and you lose that capability that we kind of rely on more than anything, strictly makes you someone who you have to focus composition and execution. Not being in the right place at the right time, not having the correct focus, your zone focus set to the right scale, not being able to hit focus correctly whenever you take a photo and you're missing this, that, or the other. That is something that will completely destroy you and make your images not as pleasing. But whenever you can do those things, it is a lot more satisfying whenever you're taking an image, in my opinion, on something that you had to kind of work for than something that you put it up to your eye and there's the box for eye autofocus over everyone else. Now, shout out in this video to a person that I personally love their work whenever it comes to this, my boy DELEON, because he's actually the reason why I got onto this manual focus kick whenever I was shooting his Leica a little bit whenever we were doing a photo walk. One amazing thing about him is that he does not settle for the image that is at hand. And what I mean by this is Lee will take his time to be able to not only craft an image very intentionally, but he also knows that sometimes taking the shot means taking the shot. So he's not going to settle and say, this is as good as I can get. And he's also not going to settle and say, I can't get it without setting up the way I want to, so I won't take it. Lee is all about just being there in the moment. And if the shot presents itself, take it. And if you have time to move some things around, to stop down, to tell more of a story, he does. I encourage you, check him out at ldeleon.gif on Instagram. He has one of the greatest portfolio, not even a portfolio, I'd call it just a masterclass on not only communicating with people when it comes to street portrait photography, but also just telling a story of the environment and the way that he curates things to be able to tell you the vibe and the essence of what's going on around him. And with that and with these lenses, that's what I'm hoping to do. These adapting onto this X Pro 3 is more of a feel than it is the necessity of this tool right here. The exact same thing could be done with an X Pro 2, an X Pro 1, an XE4, 3, 2, or 1, an XT30, and an XT3. It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter if you have Sony. It doesn't matter if you have Canon. It doesn't matter what you have. But when you adopt this, not vintage glass, but this rangefinder glass, that's what's important. There's rangefinder glass because these focus scales, when you're adapting something like this, with this feel, this throw, this tactile feedback, and the idea of knowing that, you know what, I have a better shot of hitting this if I stop down, let me focus and let me compose an image to where everything pushes towards the subject. It creates this environment to where it tells the story correct. That's whenever you start making images where you can sit back, turn around, look at the back of your screen and say, damn, I did a pretty good job. So when it comes to this perfect union, I approve, and I hope you approve too. If you have any questions or anything like that, let me know. And with all that being said, take it light, but take it. Have a good one.